update your attendance in the group. Okay, good day everybody. Today we'll be learning paper 2, which is writing. So obviously we would start with short communicative message. Now, when we talk about short communicative message, what you need to prevalently remember is technicality is more important than your language flair for this particular task, although it is writing. Okay, you need to be technically appropriate and you need to have a thorough understanding of the task. Okay, because you can't be lavish with your language in this particular part. Faham tak? You cannot use a lot of big words and your own ideas to handle this particular question. Okay, but for this particular question, you will have to abide by the rubric, abide by the requirement of the question, and fulfill the requirement of the question. Okay, now let's see. Again, it's going to be on the basis of these 3 criteria: type, challenges, and tips. Now, when we talk about the types, the type is a subjective response. In spite of it being a subjective response, it's limited because it is not confined to your personal opinion or your own idea. It is rather confined to the requirement of the questions. Now, it is part 1 of paper 2. Sorry, not all, of paper 2. It is part 1 of paper 2, writing. It carries 20 marks. So this is as important as other marks in terms of the weightage of the mark. This particular task gives you or carries 20 marks. The next one, which is guided essay, carries another 20 marks. And the other one, which is extended writing, carries another 20 marks. So each essay is equally heavy with 20 marks. Okay, the word limit is in about 80 words. However, there are no word limits. Okay, for all these 3 essays, there are no word limit. We don't confine students to any word limit. So no one can say, well, this is from 80 words right up to 200 words, or 80 words right up to 350 words. No such thing. For this particular task, the word limit or the rubric is in about 80 words, but it can exceed 80 words and you will not be penalized for exceeding 80 words. But remember, you have very limited time, and within the limited time, you will have to answer 3 essay questions. Understanding those essay questions and answering them. So you need to remember to give a very precise yet effective writing instead of rambling and giving too long of an essay, which wouldn't make sense and which gives more opportunity for you to make mistakes and hence lose marks. Okay, so this particular task, it's mostly an email or short message. All right, now the challenges. The first challenge, or the most important challenge, is understanding the requirements of the question. In order for you to effectively answer this particular question or this particular part, you need to have a very thorough understanding of the requirement of the question. You need to understand what does the question want clearly. Number 2, listing out the task requirement. You need to be able to understand and list out the task requirement. Are you able to listen? Are you able to hear clearly?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Yes,
very
sir.
good.
Yes,
So
sir.
you should be able to list out
Yes,
the
sir.
task requirements. Thank you. Then getting the balance of keeping within the confinement of word limit stipulated. Doesn't mean that you have to keep it within 80 words. Even if it exceeds, there is a balance. Okay, if they ask you to write about 80 words, you can't write up to 800 words, isn't it? It wouldn't make sense. Okay, so it is not wrong to write more than 80 words, but be mindful to abide by the task requirements and time management. Why? because we wouldn't want you to rush in writing and end up producing something that is not up to the standard that you are expected to produce. Some people have a way with words lah. They can really write, but you need to also see if you are rambling, if you're beating around the bush, and if you're giving too much information, or if you're providing too much irrelevant sections. You do not need to do that. Okay, you can, for this particular part especially, keep it to the requirements of the questions. All right, now tips. Read the task or read the question very carefully. Underline the keywords or the key points. Identify your role. Who are you in writing that particular task? Identify the nature or the role of your recipient. To whom are you writing? List down the requirements of the questions or the task. Be mindful not to miss any part of the question. These are the tips. Now, let's look at the question. We'll move on to the practice. While writing, fulfill all the requirements of the task. Every requirement. Keep your language at the right accuracy, precision, length. All these are important. Accuracy, it has to be accurate, it has to be precise, and it has to be in the right length. Be mindful just to respond to the task more than adding your own points or ideas. Your response to the task is more important than your own opinion and your own ideas or whatever you've got to say on the particular task, which is beyond the infringements of the requirements of the question. Keep it within that. Okay, marking requirement. This is very essential. Okay, now we mark your essay on these 4 bases, and this applies for every other essay. Short communicative essay, guided writing, as well as extended writing. Now, for content, we need to make sure it's relevant. It provides full information on the required task. Marks will be penalized for irrelevant sections which are present. Therefore, which is exactly why I always repeat, do not ramble. So when you ramble, you will have a lot of irrelevant sections. So marks will be penalized for that. Wrong interpretation of the task and misinformation of the target reader will be penalized as well. Communicative achievement, basically you can look at the bullets later, eventually when the lessons are up on YouTube. But what you need to understand is content EC. You need to fulfill the requirement of the question, and when the requirements of the questions are fulfilled, you have your 5 mark. Trust me, it is very, very easy to score a high mark on this particular task. Communicative achievement, whatever that you wish to communicate, whatever you wish to convey, whatever you wish to bring forth, your ideas which you put through in your writing should be able to be understood. And if that happens, you get your 5 marks. Your ideas are conveyed in a straightforward and clear way. Okay, the language is convincing. So whatever, if let's say you are giving an advice, or you are sharing an opinion, or you would want to give a suggestion, if you put that through in a convincing manner, it would be the communicative achievement would be given full marks. It is achieved. Your communication or your message or the purpose of your communication is achieved, and therefore you get full marks. Understand? This is how it works. Okay. An organization includes sequence connectors, cohesive devices in an appropriate manner. Do not just throw everything in to make it very gaudy. No gaudy expressions. Sequence connectors are there. Cohesive devices are there in order to keep the entire text intact and efficient. And lastly, but most importantly, language. Basic vocabulary is used appropriately. No gaudy expressions which are unnecessary. Because some of you, what you would do is, sometimes you would be personally fascinated by some terms. It may not exactly be very fascinating to me, but to you, probably because you've just come across a word or a phrase, you might find it very fascinating. And you would want to throw it on the paper that you write. And it may be inappropriate. So it becomes a laughing stock instead of impressing the examiner. So a natural flow of fluent language which is present consistently. Minor errors are tolerated, but meaning should not be hampered or distorted. So these are basically the ideas on which your paper or your question or your essay would be marked. Moving on. Let's look at practice 1. Now, remember this. Read the question carefully. Underline the keywords or the key points. Identify your role. Identify the role of your recipient. List down the requirements of the question. Now, keep that in our minds as we read the question. Practice 1. Your cousin has dropped you a short message. Read the message and give your advice in about 80 words. Now, you've read. So we'll have to read the message as well, because that's part of the question. Dear cousin, how are you getting on? I'm sure you are staying at home as well. This MCO period is rather boring, but at least I'm thankful that my basic needs are taken care of. I'm writing this message to ask you for any suggestions that you could give me to keep myself occupied during these days. What do you do to kill the time? Hope to hear from you soon. Stay safe, stay home. Bye, your cousin. Now, we have read the question. Now, then, we need to identify the keywords. The keywords basically here, your cousin has dropped you a message and you have to give your advice. The key idea is you are expected to give your advice. So you are supposed to advise. Remember that. That is the boundary. Now, your role, who are you? You are a cousin. Who is the recipient? What is the nature or what is the role of your recipient? He's also your cousin. Okay? You are a cousin to your cousin and your cousin is a cousin to you. So this cousin of yours who has written to you is finding the MCO to be rather boring, and therefore he is in need of suggestions as to what he could possibly do to keep himself occupied during these days. And he also wants to know, what do you do to kill the time? Now, these are the details. Now, most important part now, requirement of the question. What does the question require you to do? Primarily, number 1, remember this. This is how you need to deduce the question. Ingat ya, sangat penting. Number 1, you are expected to give an advice. Now, in the question, in the text, in the short message, what are the requirements? The first requirement is any suggestions that you could possibly give your cousin to keep himself occupied. Number 2, what do you do to kill the time? What are you suggesting your cousin to do? What do you do? These are the 2 things, and you need to advise him as to what he should possibly do. Now, do you get the idea as to how we break the question down? I'll move on to a sample answer, then you would understand it. Now, dear Elijah, how do you do? Besides feeling bored, I truly am fine. However, I have picked up a much procrastinated habit now, thanks to the time I have. So you are telling what you are doing. You see, the question requires you to tell what you do to kill the time, number 1. Number 2, you also need to say, you need to give suggestion as to what he can do. Now, Elijah is my cousin, assuming I do have a cousin by the name Elijah. Okay? Now, I have picked up a much procrastinated habit. So I have already stated what I do, although I have not been clear about it. Thanks to the time I have. It may sound lame, but trust me, it gets very interesting once you delve deeper. It is, of course, the foremost habit, reading. Now, one requirement is completed. You have already stated what you do. That is fulfilling one requirement. Moving on. I have attached myself with a couple of interesting novels, and I strongly suggest you to do the same. Requirement number two, done. You are suggesting him to do the same. Can you suggest your cousin what you are doing? You can, as long as these two requirements are fulfilled. Can you add more to it? Can, within the infringement of the requirement of the question. I strongly suggest you to do the same. Now you have already suggested. So part 1, part 2 done. Huh? You have completed the requirements. You have fulfilled the requirements of the question. At first, it may seem a little dull, but as soon as you get into the novel, you will realize that you are living in an entirely different realm in which the storyline leads you on. Besides, you can also consider taking up writing your thoughts on daily basis. This is suggestion number 2. Why? Let's look at the question. Any suggestions is in plural form, so you give more than one, just to keep yourself safe. Besides, you can also consider taking up writing your thoughts on daily basis. This would hone your writing skills on the long run, as well as nurture your imagination. Tell me what you think. Till then, bye. Dialan, that's me. Okay, now, here, you have advised him what to do. You have given him 2 suggestions. You have also stated what you do. And for the 2 suggestions that you have given, you have also stated why these suggestions are suggested. Now, this answer would get you a 20 over 20. Are you able to understand, students? As of now, do you have any questions?
Sir,
Yeah?
what is meaning of kill the time?
To kill the time is to keep yourself occupied, like to do something and not feeling bored.
Oh, okay, sir.
Okay, that's the phrase.
Sir,
Okay, now
sir,
I will reserve the time for questions later. So please keep your questions. I know writing will have a lot of questions. I will answer your questions towards the end of the lesson. Okay,
Okay, sir.
let's move on to another example. A simpler example. Huh? You have received an email from your brother Lucas, who's studying abroad. Now write an email to your brother in about 80 words. Hi Julie, I'll be back in Malaysia next week. We should spend our time together. Where do you think we should go? What activity can we do together? Which restaurant can we have good meals? Do you have anything in mind? Waiting for your reply. Bye. Okay, now we have read the question. Now we have to identify the keywords. The keyword is to reply your brother. You have to write an email to your brother. He's coming back to Malaysia for a holiday. Okay. Now, what is your role? You are Julie. You are the sister. Now, who is your recipient? Your brother. And his name is Lucas, and he's studying abroad. What are the requirements of the question? Number 1, where do you think we should go? Number 2, what activity can we do together? Number 3, which restaurant can we have good meals? And along that, do you have anything in mind? Your personal thoughts. 4 elements. Although, give me a second. Let's look at this question. Although the text seems longer, the requirement was only 2. Suggestion to kill the time. What do you do to kill the time? For this particular question though, we have 4. Where do you think we should go? Which restaurant to eat? What activity to do? What have you got in your mind? Okay. Let's look at the simple answer. A much simpler answer. Dear Lucas, of course I would like to hang out together. That can be assumed as what you have in your mind. I think we should go to Thampin Wild Park. This is the place that you should be going. Okay. It is only an hour from our house. You are reasoning. Okay. The road that would take us there is full of lush greeneries, which could be an astounding sight to behold. You are expressing what you have in your mind. Huh? So 2 requirements done. It is a great place for those who love extreme outdoor sports, your activities. We can do bungee jumping, flying fox, and riding an ATV. Requirement 3 done. Activities. They also have a palatable jungle-themed restaurant, and the food is tantalizing. Question 4 done, or requirement 4 done. It will be an exciting experience for us. Bye, Julie. This is a shorter answer in comparison to the other one, but however, this has fulfilled all the criteria, all the requirement of the question. So this can get you a 20 over 20 as well. It does not need to be extraordinarily gaudy and very high, very grandiloquent words thrown in around. No need. It can be as simple as this and still get you a lot of marks. Okay. Now, vocabulary for today. The first word is farcical, broadly and extravagantly humorous. Second word, feasible, relevant or suitable. Feral, wild and menacing. Fidelity, being faithful. Finicky, fussy and very detailed. So these are the vocabulary. So these lessons would be in my YouTube channel, which you could subscribe and watch and learn at your own pace. All right. Now, thanks. Any questions? Before any questions, I would like to also inform those who would watch the lesson on YouTube. Should you have any questions, you can type those questions under the comment section. And should I see those questions of yours, I would definitely reply to them to the best of my ability. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Hold on.
Sir.